In this episode, I'm excited to talk with Branden Singletary, an artist and philosopher whose creative expression seeks to highlight a connection between cosmos and human cognition. I found Branden on LinkedIn. His tagline read, "Making worlds that electrify the soul." So I had to have a chat with him. Although after a chat, I was kind of speechless and swimming in thoughts. And it's probably why I procrastinated even preparing for our conversation today. And my intro is going to be a little meandering, but I hope you'll like it. Before I dig in, though, whether you're listening on a podcast platform or watching on YouTube, please subscribe, like, and share. And even better, leave a comment. That helps get this episode to more people. And also, I'd love to attract a few more financial supporters. Just $5 monthly helps cover the costs for producing, publishing, and sharing my content. Back to Branden. My mind has yet to wrap itself around Branden's work, although I recognize Jungian theories in his words and the energy of Hilma af Klint in his artistic expression. She was a Swedish artist and mystic whose paintings are considered among the first major abstract works in Western art history. You'll have to check her out. I immediately saw her as the female version of Jung when I saw the documentary. Branden's story and sense of mission align with the Jungian framework, and in fact, he says Jung was an early inspiration for him. I sense Jung's theory of the transcendent third, in particular, working behind the scenes, which simply put is the act of holding the tension between what's perceived to be opposing until the opposition is reconciled. Anyway, instead of resisting the void of meaning I'm feeling, I'm excited to gain deeper understanding of what resonates in my body when it comes to Branden's work. So, like I said, this is a little meandering, but here we go, because that is the way of the feminine unconscious. She gets us to the insight faster than the defensive and controlling mind. Branden has produced a short film, an art book, and a wide array of other illustrations for the purpose of expanding deeper and farther in his quest to refine and eventually present a detailed map of patterns between worldviews, aesthetic preferences, cognitive styles, and ways of creation to benefit people who desire to live a life of boundless creativity, wonder, and awe. That's a lot. My chat with Branden is inspired by my preoccupation with the larger context of what's happening in the world. We are on the verge of another jump in consciousness. We know this because the larger systems that have become corrupt, the people who have benefited unfairly by them, and the resurgence of racism, sexism, and other forms of exploitation, as well as the normalizing of violence against the other, all these energies are clinging to persist. They're climaxing. There's a desperate energy infused in late-stage capitalism, in the hoarding of money that can't possibly be spent, in people salivating at scenes of our government turning against its own citizens. These actions are motivated by desperation and fear, not power or influence. So here we are. We don't get to pick our time in history to live. In 2020, I felt dread for 4 months as I lamented my children being the first generation in decades to have fewer rights and opportunities than their parents. But then I snapped out of it and I got to work, thinking, noticing, finding patterns, looking beneath the surface to find out what exactly is trying to break out of the collective unconscious. Nobel Prize winner for literature, Toni Morrison said, quote, "This is precisely the time when artists go to work. There is no time for despair, no place for self-pity, no need for silence, no room for fear. We speak, we write, we do language. That is how civilizations heal." End quote. Again, that's Toni Morrison. And actually, her book, The Origin of Others, is a good book to check out. We are the Renaissance, as my colleague and friend, Dr. Craig Chalkwist, and I agreed during a recent podcast chat. I wrote a blog post about how we are all creators of some sort. We can't see it yet, but it's coming, the outcome of all the individual and collective self-reflection, the personal insights coalescing with millions of others to usher in new ideas, just ideas, on how to live as humans in a way that benefits more humans. Every way you look at the division, it reveals that what most needs to be healed is the split between the archetypal feminine and masculine. The one-sided masculine nature of our systems, profits over humans and the planet, for example, has run its course, and become toxic, dangerous, disastrous. Anger about what's happening, though, can be a creative emotion when channeled properly. The angry feminine that was unleashed in the 80s forced into consciousness new ways of elevating the feminine through movements focused on equality and social justice that were reflected in laws and art. Real change and progress were made, but the backlash also was there, as it is today. We all have a wounded masculine and feminine, and our task is to reconcile those inner parts of us, which will change the world around us. What's your role? We all are a form of artist. We create every time we communicate, and we communicate every moment we're awake through words spoken or written, through our appearance and the way we move, through the stories we tell about ourselves and others, through small acts of standing up for those who are being targeted, through how we spend and earn our money, through small acts of kindness or protest. These are all ways we are creating all the time. Branden calls himself a philosopher. Depth psychology sometimes feels like philosophy to me, and other times feels like expressions of spiritual laws. Philosophy is about asking the big questions and using reason to critique our own methods and assumptions of exploring those questions. A critical mind is a powerful thing, and right now it's good to remember why Socrates was put to death for teaching young people to engage in critical inquiry, asking questions. This is what Branden is engaging in, and his purpose seems to be rooted in helping people see the connection between what can feel like an unlimited number of ways to look at things. Anyway, as I said, that was long. I'm excited about this chat, and we'll see where our conversation leads us. So let's get started. Well, hello, Branden. How are you doing? And I guess just to start, we're in a big time difference. So I appreciate you staying up a little late and I'm up a little early. But just in general, how's life these days?
Life is interesting these days. I got plenty of interesting developments in terms of my own work.
Oh,
And curiously, a lot of earthquakes have been happening lately, which is interesting in its own right. But yeah,
yeah, like interesting, disconcerting, maybe.
yes, yes, yes. Not
Oh,
something I'm entirely used to. It's hard for me to detect when an earthquake is actually happening, but hey, you know, it's all right.
oh my gosh. We'll talk about like shaking things up,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right? Like psychologically too. So, anyway, okay, so I love this part of your bio where you talk about sort of striving to refine and eventually present a detailed map of patterns between worldviews, aesthetic preferences, cognitive styles, and ways of creation to benefit people who desire to live a life of boundless creativity, wonder, and awe. It's like a poem. It's huge. It's like a big purpose and mission. And I thought maybe we could start by, you helping people understand what does that mean to you? And also I was thinking that, there's this thing, philosophy is like bubbling up to the surface. And I had even like look it up. What is philosophy exactly? And I was talking to you before our other chat about how depth psychology often it's infused with philosophy, right? So like we're living through this time where we used to think like, no, history, that's then. It's already made history, right? Or those philosophers, they already have these ideas, but like we're in this time where all of that is sort of being shaken up. And so we're doing it now. We're living it now. You're philosophizing, right? We're doing it. So anyway, just your thoughts on like that big statement that you're making and what that means to you and maybe doing a little education for my listeners and viewers.
Yeah. So I guess it will be reasonable to define what philosophy is as a philosopher does, I guess, maybe. I wouldn't particularly accept the claim that I am one, or at least I wouldn't peg it upon myself. I guess it makes sense for, it's acceptable or at least more acceptable when someone else says that you are one. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, okay, then I guess that works. But yeah, what is philosophy? I think. I would say that philosophy is about creating concepts and refining concepts and ensuring that they are organized. It's all about, in short, concepts. And concepts are, usually linguistic, but linguistic things tend to have a basis in reality too. So you are, in a way, formatting and reformatting how you see the world, or at least that's how or and how you see the world and how you communicate and talk about the world overall. And to keep the definition a bit tidy, I guess it would be wise to say that it is strictly within the bounds of ensuring that it remains organized. And a philosopher would be someone that does exactly that, someone that keeps ideas either organized or pushes a concept further in some sort of way, be it accidentally or deliberately, I guess you could say. I guess, though, it being more deliberate is more about it, is more uh, particular to the namesake of being a philosopher, I guess, because, it's philosophizing is an intentional act, I guess you could say, in a way, because of how. Because of my own lens and worldview of sorts, I would say that philosophy is a kind of means of making art of some say, in some
Mhm.
sense. But yeah, that's what I think philosophy is and what a philosopher does. As to how it relates to what I am doing, it's what I'm doing is pretty much precisely that, more so in the realm of refining concepts, mostly my own concepts about how things seem to appear to work in reality, and transmuting that into something that other people can hopefully embody and utilize is important to me because I
Yeah.
think if you have it doesn't necessarily have to be my particular framework or set of patterns or what have you. It's a way to get people to think about how they would go about doing the same thing. And I
Mm.
think if you manage to work out these concepts for yourself, then you'll have an easier time maneuvering through the admittedly confusing world or times we happen to live in now. Not to say, much about history in this instance, but
Mhm.
yeah, that's my general viewpoint on those sorts of things. Yeah.
I love that. Um, so uh, yeah, oh my gosh, there's just so much to go there. I think what the part of what you're doing I like is that, if you ask somebody like what is your framework for how you think your experience life, like people probably wouldn't know. Like, I guess we have taken so much for granted, or like we've been very complacent in thinking about our own experience, and we've just absorbed and passively, I guess, received all these different, other people's frameworks, right? So the part that I really like is how you're not only like exploring your worldview or your own framework, but that you're attempting to like make connections between all these other different kind of frameworks, right? And to make some sense of it, because I feel like we're just in a soup right now, right? Like we're in a cauldron.
Yes.
And it's hard to make sense of things. It's almost like overload, right? Because we also have relied on our mind so much. And I think one of the things that comes through in your work is I like that you use the word embody because things are felt in the body, right? Like the
Yes.
body knows the truth of the situation. And then our mind automatically is trying to put it someplace and define it someplace. And if we have these habits that are based on things that we just haven't really examined for ourselves, right? Then we are not free people, right? So I like that about that's a lot to take on,
Yeah,
right?
it is. It is.
I love it.
But it
Yeah,
can't be helped, I guess. Yeah.
right. It's just who you are. So anyway, so since I'm always looking at things through a depth psychology lens in my conversations, I love asking my guests, In hindsight, where can you see the unconscious working its ways, pushing, prodding you along the way? And, we in depth psychology, we also talk about how our earliest childhood memories can help us make sense of our life trajectory. Because some of them, like me, if you look at my resume, you're like, oh, you went there and you did that, and then you did that, you did. And it's like, oh, what is this thread that I didn't know was sort of behind the scenes, pushing and prodding me to gain the capacities that would bring me to this point, right? And so maybe this is where you want to talk about what happened to you at 5, but like, how do you look back and go, yeah, yeah, my unconscious was there. Something was pushing and prodding me.
Yeah, it was okay. So I guess for context for the viewers, the event that happened when I was at the age of 5 was a kind of vision. It happened in the middle of kindergarten. In the middle of a class while I was in kindergarten, and we were all sitting on the floor. I don't remember exactly what the teacher was doing or what the class was doing. Maybe we were told to sit down and envision uh something, I don't know what, to just close our eyes and think. But maybe that's also something that may have happened at another date. I am not sure. But for whatever reason, my eyes were closed or I blacked out. I don't know which. And I found myself sort of suspended in this column of blue folders, and at first it started off as a tunnel that I was looking down, and then the orientation shifted, and then it became, a pillar, sort of, rather me being suspended in the middle of a pillar or a column, and for some reason. All of the folders just sort of opened up, and a whole bunch of numbers and or letters just filled and flooded. And the last thing I was able to see was 2 plus 2 equals 4, or maybe it was 2 plus 2 equals 5. I don't remember which one, but then that's when I woke up, and then I just kind of looked around to see if anyone else saw what I saw, and it doesn't seem as though anyone else saw that. So it was a completely unique experience to me, and that was definitely something that I think I repressed because I just didn't have anything else. Well, okay, well, repression and not having any other visions like that since that time has happened is curious in its own right, or at least those are two
Mhm.
separate things. But yeah, I think up until I was about maybe 20, I didn't really reflect back on that, or at least intermittently. I thought back on that moment. I was like, yeah, that's weird that that happened.
Yeah.
But then I, kicked it back into the recesses of my mind and was like, okay, back to doing what I was doing, normal teenage stuff. I don't know. But yeah, as I focused more and more and more on it, as I got more and more into philosophy, that vision just sort of, became more and more interesting to me. And
Mhm.
yeah, that's that's the effects of that. Now, the as for how I think it may have impacted me, I know that it affected the creation of the art book of
Mm.
Metaforma, and the time of completion of it was very interesting, very curious on account of all of the I guess synchronous events that happened and corresponded with what I saw in the vision, and the date of when it was published, or when I sought to have it published, and the age I was
Mm.
when it was being published. Like, all of that sort of coincided in its own sort of way. Very curious. But I guess nowadays I look at it as like, well, it's I guess in the process of making the art book, it was like I saw that to be maybe this was what I was supposed to be doing. And now that I'm past that threshold, and now that there are no more synchronous events that could really transpire, at least numerically, it's like, well, it's a it was definitely some kind of motivator
Hmm.
to make something
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah.
As for what it actually is, I don't know yet. I'm on the other side of it, and clearly there's a much broader horizon of what awaits me now. So it's like, yeah. Yeah, when I did finish the art book, I mean, because of the nature of all of the coinciding events, I was like, ah, yes, this must be where everything culminates. I don't think I have to do anything else, but naturally, that's not how life generally goes. It just kind of keeps rolling on,
Yeah.
even though
Yeah.
you're, past that final event. So yeah,
Right.
that's how I see it now, I suppose. Yeah,
Mm, I love it. Well, oh, I mean, yeah, what do you do with that experience? Well, it's almost like, well, yeah, I mean, you could work, it's a spontaneous fantasy, right? Which is the same thing as our dream images, except we're
yeah,
awake. And, it was definitely had this cosmic feel to it, right? Like,
did.
wow. And I know a lot of children, young children, or I've heard like adults say when they're a child that they thought so deeply about the universe. And they didn't really have a language for it. It's more like they had this connection to it. Sorry about that. They couldn't understand. But when you're a child, because you're not corrupted by other people's ideas, you really just experience it. Like you can become one with it, but it could also be terrifying that you don't have, a way to think about it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's interesting. But you were able to like withstand that. So maybe it was just like a primer for like, I'm just getting you ready for like I don't know.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
my I tend to joke with my fiance, and it's like maybe I just needed to download some extra information. I was incomplete until that happened. I don't know. I don't necessarily believe that entirely. I think most people are generally complete, but yeah, it's funny to think of it as an extra download that was missed before anything else.
Or
So
just a
yeah.
tapping, just a tapping into it. I love the whole field of quantum physics, right? Like,
Oh, true, true.
and entanglement and think about it. Einstein said that he received the whole theory of relativity done in a dream.
Yep.
So
Yep.
like
It's not uncommon.
these things already exist. It's whether we're receptive to it. So I don't know. It's so interesting to think about that. So thank you. And then there's something else about your background as you were growing. You said then you were in a situation where you did a lot of thinking. I think you said you were working in a warehouse or something. So
Ah,
like,
yes, 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 yes.
so, what is the meaning? What is that? What is it? What were you thinking about? And was it, I don't know, like what were your emotions as you were thinking? Did you at one point feel like you were drowning in thought and you're like, no, stop thinking? Or were you like, oh my God, this is my rabbit hole. I gotta go here now.
Yeah, it was more so the rabbit hole um I guess idea. Yeah, it's uh, before the warehouse job, I was, working retail and fast food before that. And I just did not have time to, have idle thoughts. It was
Mm-hmm.
just like my focus was directly on what was in front of me all the time. And when I got the warehouse job, on account of the circumstances, I wasn't able to arrive on, at the time it was supposed to open like everyone else. And the boss trusted me enough to like give me the key to get into the warehouse and just kind of, just do whatever until, office hours, or well, not necessarily office hours, but until it was open. And I had like about an hour and a half every day, every weekday to just just alone, perfectly silent because, the city also hasn't woken up and it was also on the outskirts of the city in a way.
Mm.
So I wasn't disturbed by noise. It was very quiet. It was early hours. My brain is usually sharpest in the morning. And I just walked around the warehouse as I usually do whenever I have any sort of free time and I am not, in the presence of other people. I'm just walking around, talking, thinking, getting my thoughts out to, in a way, sort of have a better grasp on what it is actually, what actually goes on in my head. Because if I
Yeah.
just, if I don't get the thoughts out, they just get washed away with other things. So,
Hmm.
um, yeah, that's an hour and a half every day, every weekday, I should say. And at times I would like since the warehouse had computers, I would, just I don't know, load up Google Docs, write down my notes, and get
Hmm.
back to walking around the warehouse. And yeah, and eventually, after, I guess exhausting my own thoughts of things and going, oh, I could definitely do X, Y, and Z and develop this fictional world that I have and make it more interesting, push it further, et cetera, et cetera. And yeah, once I was past that part, I would, look into a whole bunch of articles about on philosophy and realize that this is a very intricate thing that exists. That the
Hmm.
whole, body of philosophy is kind of nuts in its own sort of way. And so I just sort of started slowly absorbing as much as I can about that sort of stuff and weaving it into my artwork and weaving it into my preconceived notions of how the universe worked and all of that. And also psychology too. And it just yeah, it opened my worldview up significantly. I guess when I say exponentially, maybe, or at least it was a linear progression. I'm not sure, but yeah, it was quite a time. It was a gigantic rabbit hole that I very much enjoyed plunging into pretty much every single day. Yeah, that's where my joy was, and I guess still is in its own way. Except I'm, researching less and creating more now, and I guess
Yeah.
that's the threshold that eventually a lot of people tend to reach when it comes to I guess researching anything really.
Yeah. Well, do you feel like your artwork or your expression is trying to catch up with like all of those experiences of like all of those thoughts swirling around? Because I don't know, I find that, yeah, I mean, just the whole idea of thinking is something to think about, right? Because in working with my clients, what can be most difficult is just being still, right? Because
Yeah,
we don't really allow our thoughts many times, and being busy can actually be like a defense mechanism for having our own thoughts. It's very
yep,
matrixy, like you had a matrix moment. You're like, whoa, but you weren't afraid of it, where many other people sort of avoid that because I think they don't have a framework for it. So it is interesting how that evolved, right? So you still had like this concrete job. You were grounded, and yet you
yep,
had this space where you could allow things to come up and also receive and then make these connections between what you say, the cosmos and cognition, how we experience it. So I love it. You're super interesting. So I mentioned in my intro that I feel a lot of Jung and his theories in your story, but also, and I don't know if you had known about Hilma af Klint because I didn't. So she was Swedish, and she was around the same time as Jung as he's doing his theories through the mind, but also like tapping into the feminine unconscious. She was a painter and a mystic, and she did these huge abstract paintings. So Kandinsky is the one who is like credited for being the first abstract painter. Well, decades later, she really is recognized as maybe even coming before him. So she's very interesting, but you may want to check her out. There's a like a coffee table book of her artwork, and your creative expression for me, it's just interesting that you you're not just writing, you're also illustrating, and you're expressing in multiple ways, which I think most people don't usually do. I find that to be unique about you. And so I felt like Hilma af Klint was the woman version or the female version of Jung because he had during his, I don't know how much you know, but during his 16 years of confronting his unconscious, he would have this argument with this feminine character about like, oh, I'm not an artist. What is art is like what, like, but it was this is was his what evolved into a psychology, right? Like this is art. Life is art, right? But he was like kind of condescending to it. And she's like, so it's almost funny that I don't know that Hilma af Klint is like this his inner character, but she's actually in real life. And they both did this work at the same time, but hers is artistic expression. But out of her artistic expression, she philosophized as well and produced like these thoughts about how the universe worked. I think you'd be interested in her. Um, so anyway, yeah, I said I think you're unique in this way. And also like the only thing you're not doing is dance. Movement, right? Like
Yeah,
that's literally
yeah,
the
movement.
only
Yeah,
so there's a lot of movement in your short film, but like that's the only way you're not expressing is like through dance and movement. I don't know. I just thought that was interesting. So I guess my
yeah.
question is like how did it happen that you do all these mediums? And what did you do first? And did you find like words aren't enough? Like they're not it's not enough to express like what are these ideas? And so that you started did you start with words first and then you moved into the other expressions or
Yeah, I started with images first. I actually
oh
had quite a bit of difficulty with words.
hmm,
And I mean, I know from childhood at least, it was that my drawing ability was I guess above average, but my reading comprehension was not great unless it was
hmm,
something I was actually interested in.
yeah
And I was pretty good at vocabulary, but beyond that, it's like weaving together stories was always a bit hard. It
yeah
was really difficult for me, but that did lend itself to, I guess, developing the writing medium because I did want to try and convey to other people
hmm,
what it was that they were actually looking at, and I found, well, I guess, me and the other person found that valuable. It's and eventually I did get to the point to where I could now, use either words or images to get a mental image across in a person.
hmm,
Um, Writing generally tends to be a bit faster at doing it, though I do feel my own limitations when it comes to writing because it's like, well, it's I feel like I'm using the same words and the same
hmm,
vernacular often. So I don't know. Maybe I'll have a breakthrough in some other instance when I go further into writing. But multiple mediums, I guess. Yeah, it's. I don't know. I think it's somewhat pathological for me to
hmm,
um want to convey myself in multiple mediums because
hmm,
it's like I don't know. It feels as though I've always been hard to understand through even if I were to try really, really hard to make myself understood, it just generally tends to fail. So I
hmm,
try to I try to get myself across in as many ways as I can, and to try to do it as clearly as I can with and I guess sometimes, especially when I'm just starting off with a medium, I tend to overdo it. I tend to be overly precise with my words and
hmm,
I guess the elements of the medium. Because when I started writing, it was extremely verbose, and that did not help me be understood at all. So I
yeah
learned to simplify, and that's been helping significantly. With visual art, well, I guess everyone tends to start off simply, of course, but then they fall into a sort of a style that they like. And while I was in high school, I would make these really complex and intricate pieces, and uh, in a way that it was more so taxing
hmm,
for me to create, and also people didn't again quite understand what the point of it was or what was
yeah
actually trying to be conveyed. So yeah, that's something I've chronically struggled with, but. Um, yeah, it's I do I don't know. I guess when it comes to multiple mediums, I suppose it would have to be a pathological thing that I just can't help. And I do see myself going into other mediums. I do intend on making, well, I guess I am technically already making games, and
Oh,
I will attempt, well, I guess continue attempting making a video game, and it will also require a whole bunch of other things too that I will have to understand, like programming and making
right.
music and sound design. All of that stuff will be modes of expression that I will likely be able to tap into when I'm past the point of making games. And um, to I guess also comment on the point of not doing anything, doing everything except dance. It's like, yeah, there are trade-offs, I guess you could say. And since my I guess my overall framework and philosophy is all about movement, it's like, yeah, it's an attempt to try and reach over into that domain without actually doing it because
Yeah.
I don't know, I probably have some underlying trauma when it comes to expressing myself with my own body. So,
Well,
yeah,
yeah. So yes, many people do, right? The body
yeah,
is part of the feminine and it's been denigrated and degraded. And I remember being in a somatic depth psychology class and during my residential, the professor said, I was already sweating because I'm like, what is she gonna have us do, right? And she's like, I'm just gonna play some music and I want you to move the way your body wants to move, right? As if like, aren't I my body? No, you mean my body might have a different intention than my mind does? And man, was that, I mean, at first it was kind of like, yeah, I'm just okay. I could do the casual thing, right? And then I was like, oh my God, my body wants to swing my arms around. I can't do that. That's going to make me feel foolish. Like it was so interesting. That's why I say like the body, like, I mean, the spiritual, psycho spiritual aspect, there's always a psycho spiritual aspect of whatever is going on in the body, right? So, yeah. So, well, the body might be where you go next. But a couple of things came up for me. One is when you said image, you started with images. So, Carl Jung said that the language of the psyche is the image. And an image isn't always visual, but often we think of images as visual. But I look at images as an impression, right? Like an emotional experience can be an image that we can explore, or a dynamic from this to that is an image that we can explore. And also, I mean, that's fascinating to me because the words already are limiting, right? So to experience the image first. And Jung also talked about the difference between symbol and sign. So a sign, which can be an image, is called a sign because we know what it's trying to convey. There's an agreed upon sort of, interpretation. But a symbol is not. A symbol is communicating something that the mind is like, what do I do with those? What do I do with those? What does this mean? Like the Christian cross, like way that took decades and hundreds of years for that to become have, oh, this is what the cross means. Like there wasn't that, right? It was the symbol first and there was a bodily experience of those events and the language came later. So that's, I think, the fact that you were on, you think about your vision at 5, an overwhelming image that you couldn't put words to. I think that makes sense that the images came first, the words later. Otherwise, you
yeah,
probably would have limited your expression automatically if you started with words. I don't know.
yeah,
Yeah.
probably.
Yeah, fascinating. So I was wondering how your philosophical writings have changed over time. And I don't know if you had time to do this, but I was like, do you have like a little excerpt of something that you wrote that's older and something that's more recent? And then of course, your experience of doing all of this exists within the collective or different collectives, right? The world or country, which you're not in anymore. So you probably are tapping into something different than what we are tapping into here. So I don't know, like, have you thought about like what's happened to you or how have you evolved over time in your philosophical writings?
Yeah, I can say that the the framework in terms of it, imagining it as a sort of scaffold. The scaffold hasn't changed that much. It's the
Mhm.
content within the scaffold that
Mm.
has. And it's a matter of it was a matter of rearranging what the borders meant really from the inside out. I guess you could
Mm.
say. I mean, that's probably extremely abstract, but it's yeah, the definitions have changed. That's what I guess I could
Mm.
say. Uh, I don't have any excerpts, but I do have a vague example.
Hmm.
So I guess let me see about maybe well, yeah, it was more sort of around the beginning. So yeah, about 7 or so years ago, I more or less defined space as a sort of dimension of of just dimensions period it's yeah, in another podcast I was in the host described it as sort of extension, which is very technical, but it's you're basically, if you treat an extension as like, I guess you to create an illustration of sorts, you have a point and there is no effective space, or at least there is no way to move or traverse that space. It's not until you draw a line, which is
Mm.
a point of extension, to where you'd be able to move within that dimension, and then you have one line, and then you have another line that points vertically, and then a third one which points, I guess. Orthogonally or something like that in order to create some semblance of a cubic room of sorts. And that's sort of what space represented, at least 7 years ago for me in my own framework. Now, space has more so been renamed into I think now so bond makes more sense because
Mm.
bond is about, or at least in this framework, the space in which things happen. And um, 7 years ago, I used space to try and convey that the space that something takes up in terms of it being forcefully pushing out and separating itself from other things. But that sort of conception is now just simply called a body, or at least more particularly indicative of difference
Mm.
in a more philosophical context. Um, and the difference is, in the sense, just contrast. Um, 7 years ago, I didn't really have the words for that, so I was just kind of weaving things together and like pushing it out and seeing what happens. And testing all of those concepts came later. But yeah, so I guess if I could simply draw the distinction between the two, 7 years ago, space was it was simply the space in which things happen, or at least that tries to push out upon other things. And now space is more so just where things happen,
Mm.
and the forcing aspect of things comes from simply making divisions and separations between different things via difference, via contrast, because as you can, I guess, see, there are plenty of things that are distinctly different from each other, and they are, at least visually, at least divided by color and texture, and other variables uh, will manifest as you interact with them. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, all right. So, oh, that's interesting. Mm. I love your brain or your mind. Okay, so speaking more of like your expressions, I loved your short film. It's called Desire. Why did you title it Desire? Mm.
That I don't remember.
Okay, that's all right. I mean,
Yeah.
the reason I bring that up is the other thing that I was thinking about when you're talking about images is that I find myself in my work with clients, I find myself paying even more and more attention, not simply to like the words that they use matter, of course, right? So when I'm listening to somebody, I can see what's behind the word, like, oh, that's interesting you use that word. But it's interesting how people have allowed the people around them have allowed them to tell them what they feel and what they're thinking. And I often am like, oh, but is that true? Right. So I don't know. It's just interesting. So I'm teaching people to say, what do you mean by that? Right? Because a word is subjective. I mean, there
Yes.
really is no truly object reality. It's experienced through our psyche. We can't experience it through anything except through our psyche. So I don't know. So that's just something I want to think more about because I find myself, whoa, 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 whoa. What? What is that? Whoa, you like that story. Like, what is that story about? And they're usually disempowering stories, right? So I don't know. So words can be problematic.
Yes.
And
Very much so.
yeah, and I think this is a time where, I don't know, we need to deconstruct that. So, anyway, okay, so I was asking you about desire, but when I was listening to the prologue, this is what the parts of the prologue are. You start with space generated body, time generated mind, the void, I love that word right now, generated soul, the interconnectivity of all patterns. So, like, right away, I can relate this sort of to Jung in that, well, I mean, you're really, really reflecting his theories about like holding the tension between this and that, right? Until there's a sort of like new insight that emerges. And that's what we're constantly doing. That's the expansion of consciousness is doing that, this and that. But what I really liked is the soul part because, for me, soul is feminine, right? It can't be pinned down. Like you could, sometimes it's a noun, sometimes it's a verb, sometimes it could be an adjective, it can be an adverb, but it's like this, it's a function. I love one of my professors said, the soul is a function and it helps reconcile the feminine and the between the feminine and the masculine, between heaven and earth, between whatever. So, I mean, that just really, that's what I thought. So, like, I don't even know what you mean, but I like just, I can feel. And this is what I love about your stuff is that the fact that I can't like wrap my mind around it right away is good, right? Because this is a time when we're wanting something new to be unleashed from the collective unconscious that pushes us forward in expansion or a consciousness expansion. So, like, those three statements were a poem for me. So I thought, I don't know, whatever you want to share about, it's a lot in that short film. It's 27 minutes, but like all these different
Yeah.
sections and these, I don't know if you would call them phases or whatever they are. Um, but they are like a story. It's a story. It is a story. It's a story arc. So I don't know. And I'm going to add links to the things that really preoccupied me. And then people can, or got my attention, can go wherever they want with your work. But I mean, your body of work is like, it's just expansive. So, these were a couple of things that kind of, popped out to me. So whatever you want to say about this short film and what you're trying to convey, I guess, to people.
Yeah. It's the short film was quite an adventure to make. I can say that throughout the production and whenever I found myself rewatching it, I always found myself in tears.
Mm.
It's a very
Mm.
powerful thing and deeply meaningful to me on many accounts. I can say that it is a kind of creation story. Yeah.
Mhm.
It's an attempt to try, I guess this can be a sort of reinterpretation of what I mean or why I named it Desire beyond the aesthetic pull of wanting. Oh, initially I wanted the Desire was going to be the first part of a trilogy. and
Mm.
desire was, the first part of the trilogy, and then the second one was going to be becoming, and then the third one was going to be transcendent, and then together they would all read desire becoming transcendent. I didn't at the time know what that really meant. I didn't
Mm.
know what that meant, but it sounded interesting to me and something worthy of pursuit, perhaps. But it's desire is I guess, a way to try and capture how different desires manifest in people, which is again the fundamental bones of the framework that I have or am working to develop. And that is a um train of thought kind of
Yeah,
dissolved. But
that's okay.
it's
Well, again, like it's hard,
yeah,
it's full of images. So just so people know, it's not like there aren't people in it. There are
yeah.
amazing images and movement and music, and then you have just few words that are trying to capture. I mean, I think you already captured it. Like, yeah, I mean, I think it's good to be at a loss of words. I think people need to just go see it. But yeah, you said it's a creation story, right? So we're
It is a creation story. Yeah.
yeah.
And yeah, to pick up, I guess, where my train of thought
Hmm.
went off the rails, I guess. But
Yeah.
it was
I call that a brain fart. That happens to me.
yep. It's an attempt to capture everyone's, or at least people's, general means of wanting things, how they want things, and what they do to get them. And that's pretty much all that desire is about. Now, I will say that it's not explicitly about other people. I
Mhm.
made it that way, but initially it was simply about my own different desires of different kinds manifesting throughout my own psyche in a way. It
Oh.
was in
Hmm.
my initial attempt at psychoanalyzing myself in a way. Um,
Oh,
and
okay. I love that right there because I just immediately went right up to the archetypal realm, which is what I do as an
yep,
INFJ. And I'm like,
uh,
oh, like this applies to me too. Like, I mean, oh, I love it. People have to watch it.
yep, yeah, and to even I guess pull in some of my inspirations for that sort of motivation, it was indeed MBTI and getting into typology, like really, really deep into typology, and yeah, Jungian theory very much bolstered this framework. And because of my own inclinations when it comes to definitions and conceptual clarity, and I guess interconnectivity, and I guess in a way elegance overall. It's like I wanted these concepts to have some sort of actual foundation because I didn't know where you pulled the functions from. I don't know. It was from patience. I now
Right.
realize,
Yeah.
of course, but it's like I want it to be outside of the patience. I want it to be something that could be pointed to and go like, oh yeah, that's obviously where that came from. I don't know, but yeah, to try and trace it back from just mere observation, perhaps. And that's more or less how these different I guess realms developed in their own sort of way. And I tried to fit all of my desires within those boxes, I guess you could say. And it definitely made something unique. That much I
Yeah.
can say.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Then there's the question of like, there's the question of, you know, what are, do we know all of our desires? Do we actually know what we desire is really what we desire, right? Because we have this stuff in our unconscious that we're not aware of. And then we have the stuff in our conscious and we have our mind, our ego sort of mediating between the two. And, sometimes we're like, well, we want this because, oh, yeah, somebody sort of has convinced us that we want that. But really, what's the deeper desire underneath it? So that's what you were digging into. There's another, and so in your let's see, in your illustrations, so short story writings, illustrations, in catalog one, page 3, you have one
Mhm.
titled Bridge.
Mhm.
And I was like, oh, I read your description. I was like, oh, I feel it. And I would love it if you have this handy and you could read the description and maybe
Yes.
describe what the illustration is. And that I'll tell you then what I was relating it to. But what is that? What does it mean to you? How did it come to you? What are you trying to convey in that illustration? I love it.
Right. I guess for the listeners, to describe the image, it is sort of a side shot of someone on their knees, head, pretty much in the dirt, and their hands are clasping, well, each other, I guess, and they're held above the head. And the background is pretty, empty. It's perhaps it looks like it's in some sort of large, empty room of sorts, and the upper right corner of the image is, or at least the room, I guess, is erased in favor of having a this this pinprick of who knows what, some sort of energy pointing downwards at the figure, and it's somewhat also a bit cloud-like uh, in a way, sort of similar to some sort of barrier of sorts. But it's yeah, I guess that fully encapsulates the image without getting
Yeah.
into like the sigil at the bottom of the image, which custom
Yeah.
language and all of that. But let's see, the excerpt,
Yeah.
or at least the description. The idea of miracles conjured this mental image. Some are not as blessed or privileged to have direct access to divine magic. Somewhere in the forgotten fringes of society, one pleads to the heavens for deliverance. Felt and known, it is reflected. The heavens need them as much as they need it. And it's representative of, I guess, multiple ideas of the divine. It is the fact that, well, yes, humans may have envisioned the divine, but also, the divine, if it is indeed real, definitely put that idea into man in order
Hmm.
to conceive of it in the first place. And that creates the tether between the two of them, or at least that's how I was envisioning it. Um, what, 2 years ago? Yeah, I made this 2 years ago. So it was also inspired by a philosophical work by Martin Buber called Ich and Du, which translates from German as I and you, I believe. And the I would, of course, be the human individual, and the you would be the totalizing other, or at least in Buber's context, it would be God. That's what it referred to, and I forget the exact context for why I found that. Uh, or at least my cursory viewing of the work interesting, but the connection is there. That much I
Yeah.
can say.
Well, I mean, so much comes up for me. I mean, I can relate to part of well, I might have told you this, but my midlife falling apart coincided with an irrational calling to desire to pursue a master's PhD in depth psychology without knowing what it was, why, what I was going to do with it, how I was going to pay for it, well, how it was going to help me, anything. And so there's that desire. Like it was the first time that I followed an irrational call because I knew it was going to save my soul. So anyway, I lived all these Jungian concepts like in real time, but I remember the moment that as you go through this process of peeling back, right? Your all these layers of defensiveness that I had a moment when I was meditating slash praying and I felt a burden being lifted. It was weird, lifted, removed from my shoulder. And it was the sense that, no, you're not. alone here on your own. Because I just went off into the world like I'm going to make my own life. Like I didn't have that sense of I knew that I was loved, but like this feeling that I was loved, right? And so it's interesting because that was a huge shift in me. And at the same time, I was researching, and I loved one of the Jungian analysts who talked about Jung's self, right? So Jung said the self was like an ordering principle in our psyche, right? That, we've got our unconscious, our conscious, the unconscious is bigger. Then we got the self that's kind of like not telling us what to do, but like, so we can become more of who we're supposed to become. And, she said that our self is the bridge to the transcendent, right? The bridge to the collective, to the family, right? To the collective. So your relationship with yourself determines your access. So your image of like when you say not everyone's blessed to have access to connection with the divine, that is determined by your connection with the deeper parts of yourself. So, like, and then also it reminds me, I don't know if you've heard of Jung's book called, what's it called? The story of Job. And the story of Job is about God throwing a temper tantrum, basically. But, in that book is communicated how, if we look at God as consciousness, that consciousness and God come to know itself through its creation, right? And then we're looking back and we're mirroring back and we are separate, but we're not separate, right? So that's all the stuff that came up for me in that one illustration of yours. I mean, I just thought it was really fantastic. I'd love to. That's the one that popped out at me once. So, because I've had an embodied experience of that, what you're expressing, which you probably did too, which is maybe
Yeah.
right. So, which
With
is
that
why you're
series
here.
of illustrations, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. So, anyway, I'm going to share the link to that specifically. And yeah, I mean, I got through all my questions. So, like, is there anything else that you want to share or want people to know? And of course, I'm going to share links and, and what do you want from people? Like this is what you're doing. You're an artist. I'm trying to be an artist. And, artists don't always earn a living doing the parts of the stuff that we're really passionate about, like these meaningful conversations. So, how can people help? How can they follow you? How can they, so if there's anything missing that you want to make sure you communicate or something that's coming up, maybe I know you're working on another short film. And then what do you want from people?
Yeah. So I guess I could say that, well, I wish I had my newsletter sorted out at the moment. Nonetheless, I mean, I guess I technically have one, but it's fine. Nonetheless, I can say that if you want to see more of my work, you could find me on Substack, or at least on most social media under the moniker Nexumorphic.
Okay.
I believe. Yeah, most of the links that I use have that in there somewhere. So yeah, just yeah, follow me there if you find it to be up your alley. If you find any of it interesting, if you want to support me, do that. That's the primary way that you can do that at the moment. And yeah,
That's
that's
great.
pretty
I
much it.
mean,
Beyond that, I guess I could say what I'm working on right now. Right now I'm trying to finalize a number of different things regarding the framework. Right now, I'm working on a language that has actually been pretty helpful at organizing the concepts rather well. It is coming together rather nicely, and it's in a state that I am quite, I guess, at the moment proud of. And yeah, yeah. No, beyond that, I think that's pretty much it.
I love it.
Working
I
on some new
mean,
artwork.
I don't
That's
know.
yeah.
This is the time when we have to be, like I said in my intro, in 2020, I went through 4 months of actually feeling dread. Like my life, I just was like, oh, I'm going out there, I'm gonna do what I want. I've gone after everything I want. And I was like, oh my God, what is happening? My children are the first generation in decades that They might have less rights than I did. Like, I just, no, no. Like, seriously, I never felt dread in my life. And then I got over it. And then I was like, oh my gosh, I got to get to work. But what do I do? Right. And I found meaningful work because I help people explore their unconscious. And many of my clients are sensing they're being called to be part of what's happening. But the anxiety is we don't know what we're creating, right? We just know lots of people are self-reflecting and, finding meaning in different ways, but there is a lot of anxiety at the same time because we just don't know. So having a framework is really helpful, and having a big framework for, like you say, a creation story or understanding yourself at a deeper level is a way to help you be grounded and not go nuts or not fall into despair.
Yep, yep.
Despair is bad. So, at least being neutral. Anyway, so I love your work, and maybe in the future we can have another chat. Like I said, I'm not usually tongue-tied, but I'm digging it. I'm digging the awkwardness of just kind of feeling like like it's powerful, but I don't even know how to put words to my experience of it. So I appreciate your work very much. Thank you so
I'm
much for
glad.
taking
Yes.
time to chat again.
Likewise. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me too.
You're welcome. So, all right. Well, I'll just read my little outro here. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Branden Singletary, artist and philosopher whose creative expression seeks to highlight a connection between cosmos and human cognition. And one more thing, if you enjoyed this interview, of course, please subscribe and like and share and comment. And you can be a tiny financial supporter to help me cover the costs of doing this work. And I'll share all kinds of links. And until next time, take care.